Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLuga. Thanks so much for tuning in here on Friday, January 10th. The talk of the town right now, the talk of the NFL outside of, some pretty important games going on this weekend in the wild card round of the playoffs, it's the coaching search, right? And the Jaguars are one of the teams looking for a new head coach. Obviously, Trent Baalke is still in place for now. Who knows what's going on there? Certainly I don't. But I did want to talk about a subject that's less about the coaching and more about personnel, because as much as we want to talk about coaching being an issue for the Jaguars last year, and I think it absolutely was, I still think that there are personnel issues. I still think that Trent Baalke has done some questionable things. And I want to talk about a specific position that is going to massively impact Trevor Lawrence moving forward, and that's the wide receiver position. And so I think the way the Jaguars are positioned right now, the way Trent Baalke is going to be viewing this football team, I don't think that he's going to make a major investment at wide receiver in 2025. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake that could cost the Jaguars. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully Trent Baalke can see that they need more on the outside. And if he doesn't, hopefully they do have enough. And I'm just wrong, right? I want Trent Baalke or whoever's making decisions for the Jaguars to be right. But when I look at this football team, I think they need another legitimate receiver. Now, they have Brian Thomas Jr., obviously, who is unbelievable. One of the best rookie seasons you'll ever going to see, right? Bottom line. And they still have Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk under contract. I think they're going to try to move on from Christian Kirk. They were going to try to do it at the trade deadline, according to a lot of rumors and reports, but obviously he got injured right before the trade deadline, and then that certainly couldn't happen with the injury. The Jaguars would save like $10 million in cap space by moving on from him. They could use that money to shore up a lot of different spots. They could even use that money to improve the wide receiver position. And the reason... So I look at Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, and they're not 100% redundant skill sets, but they both work over the middle of the field more often than not. Intermediate to the middle, of the field. And so I don't think that they have the most complementary skill sets. Now, can they both get the job done at a high level? Yes. But again, Christian Kirk has had 2 season-ending injuries the last 2 years. The Jaguars save a lot of money by moving on. I think that's what Trent Baalke's going to do. I'm going to turn the light on here. It's a little dark. I think that's what Trent Baalke's going to do, is move on from Kirk. And I don't think he's going to make a massive move to try to replace the value of his contract at the wide receiver position. I think the way the Jaguars are talking, I think they're going to view going and getting a new offensive mind to run the offense, be more creative, less predictable, and being able to run the ball. I think they're going to internally view that as enough to get this offense going in the right direction. I still think while Brian Thomas Jr. should be targeted 10 plus times every single game, that they could use another outside wide receiver that could really help, because Trevor Lawrence has thrived with guys on the outside that can go up and get contested catches. And Brian Thomas Jr. can do that a little bit, but he's more of the create separation with his unbelievable speed and athleticism and length. And he can be a 3-level threat, but I think you could really use another possession type guy, somebody who can go up and get those 50-50 balls, contested catch guy. And that doesn't mean they can't be a separator, right? But Trevor Lawrence has thrived in his career with guys that he knows one-on-one, I can throw the ball up to this guy and he's going to go get it. And Marvin Jones is the guy that's been best at that throughout Trevor Lawrence's career. Yes, Marvin Jones, who was up there in years when Trevor Lawrence was throwing him the football. He was the only reliable go up and get it type of guy that Trevor Lawrence has had. Brian Thomas Jr. does that a little bit again, but he's creating a ton of separation as well. And you want to feed Brian Thomas Jr. in all 3 levels, but it would be good to take a little bit of attention away from Brian Thomas Jr., in my opinion, with another really good receiver who Trevor Lawrence can also rely on as a contested catch guy, as a move the chains guy. You look at some of the best offenses in football, and they have 2 legitimate number ones. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. You look at the 49ers, they have had a plethora of number one options. And as much as I like Evan Ingram, I do think he should probably be a third option in the offense. If they move on from Christian Kirk, he's going to be the second option. And I look at the Gabe Davis situation. I think Trent Baalke's going to say, hey, we signed him last year. He's going to be around this year. Monetarily, cap-wise, like, it just doesn't make sense to move on from him. No one's going to be taking on that contract. We can get more out of Gabe Davis if he just stays healthier. Like, because last offseason, Gabe Davis wasn't healthy. He didn't get to practice much, and then he battled through injuries this year as well and ended up going on IR. I think Trent Baalke is going to say he's going to be under contract. We can get more out of Gabe Davis, and we can be good with Brian Thomas Jr., Evan Ingram, Gabe Davis, Parker Washington, who I drafted, who I really like. We've seen a lot out of him in the slot. Britton Strange, who I drafted, who I like a lot, who we've seen a fair amount out of him as a tight end, pass catching tight end, not just a blocker. And then maybe adding like an auxiliary piece in the draft or in free agency. I just don't think he's going to make a major swing. I don't see it happening. I don't see him trying to sign one of these top guys, but I think they should. And I'll talk about who I think that they could go get if they really wanted to support Trevor Lawrence to the best of their ability and create a high-powered offense. We'll talk about that, but first, want to remind y'all, check out Underdog. Signing up is straightforward and playing is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with promo code DuvalDaily, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. Maybe you think you're going to see some Justin Herbert, some CJ Stroud popping off in that first game of the playoffs coming up this Saturday. You make the call. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code DuvalDaily to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. You can also pick a running back to score, and Underdog has vulture protection in case your running back gets vultured. Must be 18 plus, 90 plus Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Avoid in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. So looking at some of the options I think the Jaguars have to really upgrade this wide receiver position and give Trevor Lawrence two legitimate big-time outside wide receivers. Obviously, T. Higgins, if he hits free agency, is going to be probably the highest paid guy that hits free agency at the wide receiver position, probably a $30 million man. I would not be against it. If you're going to move on from Christian Kirk, you're going to be sitting with close to $50 million in salary cap space. You're looking at ahead at the Jaguars cap space in the future. They're healthy with that cap. It's going to continue to rise. So T. Higgins, if you're paying him $30 million, probably looking at probably a 4-year deal. Probably looking at, and he's 25, going to be 26 soon, so he's plenty healthy, plenty young, entering his prime. The only question mark is he has missed some games the last couple years, but he's been mostly available for the Cincinnati Bengals. You're looking at, if you pay him $30 million a year, probably a year one cap hit of like 12, 13 million, about 35, 40% of that average annual value. 26, and if it's a 4-year deal, 2026 and 2027 would be where the big money is there. And then 2028, you would potentially be able to move on if you want to. I mean, he should still be in his prime at that time, and you won't be paying Brian Thomas Jr. yet. Of course, Trevor Lawrence's contract, his extension will really start hitting the books around that time. Trayvon Walker, if they decide to extend him, which I think they will, they should. His extension would be hitting the books around that time as well. So that would be when your guys are starting to really cost some money. Your draft picks are really starting to cost you some money, besides like Josh Hines-Allen and Tyson Campbell. So I think that, timeline-wise, it makes sense still to go get a T. Higgins type of player. I think he's clearly going to be best wide receiver asset that hits free agency unless there's a big surprise because of his youth, because of his relationship with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence and T. Higgins, they hooked up for a lot of touchdowns at Clemson. One of the best offenses we've seen in a long time in college football. They were a lot of fun to watch together. And he's the type of guy that can get deep, can go up and get contested catches. He has a history with Trevor Lawrence. I just think that it would be so freaking cool to see T. Higgins lined up opposite Brian Thomas Jr. How about you get him in a bunch formation? They're lined up together. Defenses don't know what the heck to do. You've got a new offensive play caller. Trevor Lawrence feeling good throwing the football down the field. I think it could be fireworks in Jacksonville. And look, yeah, you need to improve your defense. But again, let's say you moved on from Christian Kirk. You're sitting at $46 million ish in cap space. Probably you might make a couple other moves where you're closer to 50, maybe above 50. T. Higgins, that $13 million of his year one cap hit, you're still sitting there with well over $30 million in cap space to go make some other moves. Try to fix the safety position. If you actually go get T. Higgins in free agency, you take cornerback Will Johnson with the top pick at number 5 overall, and you're set, right? You're looking pretty darn good. Obviously, I think you need to improve the guard spot as well, but you have the free agent money to do that. You could go get a Tevin Jenkins. You could take a swing on James Daniels if you're feeling comfortable with his injury. He had the Achilles, so who knows there, but he's a good football player. Or you could just say, hey, we're going to go get our starting guard in the second round, right? So if you want to go that route and sign a T. Higgins, I'd be all over. Even Amari Cooper, to a lesser extent, sure. You could definitely do that. Now, I might rather invest more money elsewhere and then go get a top receiver in the draft than Amari Cooper, just because Amari Cooper is 30 years old. He's up there in age. I think he's still a very good football player. And I think being around a vet like that would be really good for T. Higgins. I mean, for Brian Thomas, excuse me. It would be really good for him because Amari Cooper has been through, if he retired today, he's had a hell of a career. He's been through a lot in his career, and he was a former really high draft pick. So I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned from an Amari Cooper for Brian Thomas Jr., right? But let's say you don't get T. Higgins or Amari Cooper or even like a Chris Godwin to that extent. And you improve your safety spot. You improve corner, through free agency, and you want to go hit it in the draft. I'd be fine with Tetero McMillan, and I think there's a chance, based on pre-draft evaluation, I think Tetero McMillan out of Arizona, who's 6'5", 215 pounds, unbelievable ball skills. He attacks the ball. I love the way he runs routes and makes himself available to the quarterback. Like when that ball is in the air, he's coming back to find it. He's attacking it at its highest point. He's going to get it. And that's not just in contested situations. Like you see him when he's running a dig or a comeback, he is working himself back towards the ball to get it and make sure that the defender doesn't have a chance to knock it away, which I just love that from T-Mac. So, there's a chance that like Tetero McMillan has a better career than T. Higgins. I think from a prospect perspective, I have T-Mac rated higher than I had T. Higgins rated. T. Higgins was a second round pick, right? So, and I had T. Higgins a little higher than he went. But T-Mac I have as a top 10 prospect. I mean, I think Luther Burden would be fantastic as well. I think if Travis Hunter fell to you and you wanted to play him at receiver, that'd be fantastic. You could also just address everything in free agency besides corner and receiver and say that's what we're doing in the first 2 rounds. That's not my favorite plan because in round 2, in one of the first couple rounds, I'm really excited about potentially getting like a Tyler Booker, an Armand Membu, Marcus Mbo, someone of that ilk. Tyler Booker, though, I mean, that would just be a home run because the Jaguars need to get more physical. But hey, let's say you're not going to worry about guard in the draft and you want to do it in free agency. I mentioned Tevin Jenkins. I mentioned James Daniels. If you want to lock it down, you can just go get Trey Smith and get the most physical guy out there. Absolute monster. That would be a way to do it. And I talked about it. I think Trent Baalke will try to sign Trey Smith. So again, the whole point of this is I'm worried that the Jaguars are not going to prioritize wide receiver enough. And that's not me saying they should prioritize wide receiver and not address these other spots. I think they should address all these spots: safety, corner, guard, assuming Brandon Sheriff is no longer around. I'm just worried that Trent Baalke and company are going to say, look, as long as we can improve this running game, we can get more creative on offense, we're going to be just fine. And maybe that's right. Maybe he is right. Maybe that line of thinking would be correct. But I would love to see two legitimate outside receivers in Jacksonville for the first time in a while. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and y'all have a good weekend.